Libya, a land with a rich history, a diverse culture, and immense potential. Once Africa's wealthiest, most stable nations, a beacon of progress on the continent, until 2011. A nation boasting impressive infrastructure, a thriving economy fueled by its vast oil reserves, and a relatively high standard of living for its citizens. The world watched as anti-Qaddafi protests exploded. Frustration with the long-standing regime reached a boiling point, igniting a wave of demonstrations across the country. NATO, led by the US, launched a military campaign. A coalition of forces intervened, citing humanitarian concerns and the need to protect civilians from the escalating violence. Operation Odyssey Dawn, the name given to the initial military intervention, signaling the start of a new chapter in Libya's history. To protect civilians, the stated goal was to prevent a potential massacre in Benghazi and to safeguard the Libyan population from further harm. But instead of peace, Libya spiraled into chaos. The intervention, intended to bring stability, inadvertently unleashed a chain of events that plunged the nation into a prolonged period of conflict and instability. Let's break down how US intervention broke Libya, examining the key decisions, the unintended consequences, and the complex web of factors that contributed to the nation's downfall, and why it still matters. The repercussions of the Libyan intervention continue to resonate across the region and the world, shaping geopolitical dynamics and raising critical questions about the effectiveness and ethics of foreign intervention. In early 2011, Libya's streets were filled with protest and violence. Inspired by the Arab Spring uprisings in neighboring countries, Libyans took to the streets to demand political reforms and an end to Qaddafi's authoritarian rule. The United Nations stepped in, authorizing military force. Citing the government's violent crackdown on protesters, the UN Security Council passed Resolution 1973, paving the way for international intervention. NATO's warplanes backed by US drones and intelligence began enforcing a no-fly zone, preventing Qaddafi's air force from attacking rebel positions and civilian populations. Striking Qaddafi's forces, targeting military installations, command centers, and strategic assets across the country, and supporting rebels near Benghazi, providing them with air cover, logistical support, and ultimately, the momentum to advance against the government forces. Over 19,000 sorties hammered Libya's military, crippling its ability to effectively resist the rebel advance, crippling command centers, disrupting communication networks, and weakening the government's control over the country and weapon stockpiles, depriving Qaddafi's forces of the resources they needed to sustain their military campaign. As airstrikes rained down, rebels advanced, emboldened by the international support and the weakening of the government's military capabilities. By August, Tripoli fell. The rebels, backed by NATO air power, seized control of the capital, marking a turning point in the conflict. October 2011, Qaddafi was captured and killed. The former leader's death marked the end of an era, but it did not bring an end to the violence and instability that plagued Libya. But Libya's revolution didn't end with his regime. The power vacuum created by Qaddafi's removal unleashed a new wave of challenges and conflicts. Power collapsed into chaos. The absence of a strong central government allowed rival factions to emerge and compete for control. Rival militias seized control of cities, regions, and oil fields. Armed groups, often with competing agendas and foreign backing, carved out their own territories and fought for dominance. Instead of a united democracy, Libya split apart, fractured along tribal, regional, and ideological lines. Two governments, each claiming legitimacy and vying for international recognition. Countless warlords, each commanding their own militias and controlling their own territories. Endless violence. The country descended into a state of perpetual conflict, with civilians bearing the brunt of the fighting. By 2015, Libya's GDP was cut in half, its economy shattered by the ongoing conflict and the disruption of oil production. Poverty skyrocketed, leaving a large segment of the population struggling to meet their basic needs, and basic services disappeared. The infrastructure crumbled, leaving people without access to electricity, water, and healthcare. Hospitals and schools crumbled, depriving people of essential healthcare and education. The vacuum was filled by militias, who exploited the chaos to expand their power and influence. And even ISIS, the terrorist group, exploited the instability to establish a foothold in Libya, further exacerbating the conflict. Ordinary people paid the heaviest price. Millions were displaced, forced to flee their homes in search of safety and security. Why does this still matter? Because the consequences of the Libyan intervention continue to shape the region and the world. Libya is now a proxy battlefield, a stage for competing foreign powers to pursue their own interests. Egypt, Turkey, Russia, and the UAE all back different factions, fueling the conflict and prolonging the instability. The chaos spills over, fueling wars across North Africa, destabilizing neighboring countries, and creating a breeding ground for extremism. And the lesson? Humanitarian interventions, even with good intentions, can have unintended and devastating consequences, can unleash consequences that last decades, leaving a country shattered and its people suffering, especially when there's no plan for what comes after. A clear strategy for post-conflict stabilization and nation-building is essential to prevent a relapse into chaos. Libya's story is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the complexities and challenges of foreign intervention. Power, diplomacy, and intervention are never simple. They require careful consideration, a deep understanding of the local context, and a commitment to long-term engagement. What began as a mission to protect civilians, with noble intentions and a desire to alleviate suffering, ended in a fractured state, a nation torn apart by conflict and struggling to rebuild, and a warning for us all. A warning to proceed with caution, to consider the potential consequences, and to prioritize long-term stability over short-term gains. If you want more deep dives into the impact of global interventions, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Your support helps us continue to produce in-depth analysis and shed light on complex global issues.